when Sera Dalton snarled, "Just walk away, idiot," at the dangerous stranger in that dark alley, she had no idea she was talking to the most feared man in the city, or that her 7-year-old daughter would be the key to melting his frozen heart. Marco DeLuca had built his empire on fear and respect, but one bruised waitress and her mute child were about to shatter every wall he'd built around his soul. What started as a simple rescue would become a deadly game of cat and mouse, where Sera's violent past collides with Marco's guilt-ridden present, and where loving the wrong man could cost her everything she's fought to protect. But here's the twist that will leave you speechless. The very thing that brings them together might be exactly what tears them apart forever. Subscribe and comment below if you've ever had to choose between safety and love, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who saves it. Sera Dalton felt exhaustion seep into her bones as she untied her grease-stained apron. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while she counted her tips. $17. Her ribs ached where Tommy's collectors had grabbed her 3 days ago. "You heading out, hun?" Marge called from behind the counter. "Yeah, long day." Sera's voice was flat. She gathered her purse and jacket. The rain had started again. Perfect. She pushed through the glass door into the October night. Cold droplets hit her face as she walked toward the bus stop. Her phone buzzed, a text from her babysitter. Lily fell asleep reading. Left mac and cheese in fridge. Sera felt relief wash over her. At least Lily was safe. Warm. Fed. The bus ride took 20 minutes through narrow streets lined with broken streetlights. Sera pressed her forehead against the cold window. Her reflection stared back, hollow eyes, bruised jaw she'd covered with makeup. She got off at Pine Street and walked 3 blocks to their apartment building. The elevator was broken again. She climbed 4 flights of stairs, each step sending sharp pain through her ribs. At apartment 4B, she fumbled for her keys. A white envelope was taped to the door. Final notice from the electric company. Sera's chest tightened as she read the amount due. Inside, the apartment was dark except for a small lamp in the living room. Mrs. Chen from next door sat on the couch, reading a paperback novel. "How was she?" Sera asked quietly. "Good as always. Drew you a picture." Mrs. Chen pointed to the coffee table. "Ate her dinner. No problems." "Thank you so much. I can pay you Friday." "Don't worry about it, dear." Mrs. Chen patted Sera's arm and left. Sera looked at Lily's drawing. A house with a big sun and 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, both smiling. Sera's throat tightened. She walked to Lily's bedroom and cracked the door open. Her 7-year-old daughter lay curled under a worn purple blanket. Dark hair spread across the pillow. Peaceful. Safe. "Things will get better, baby," Sera whispered. "I promise." She closed the door and leaned against the hallway wall. The final notice crumpled in her fist. $300. She had maybe 50 in her checking account. A loud bang echoed through the apartment. Sera froze. Her breath caught as another bang followed. Someone was at the front door. Bang, bang, bang. Sera's heart hammered against her ribs. She crept toward the door and pressed her eye to the peephole. 2 men stood in the hallway. Both wore dark jackets. Both looked angry. "She's in there," one said. His voice carried through the thin door. "Tommy wants his money, plus interest." Sera backed away from the door. Her hand shook as she reached for her phone. But who would she call? The police? They'd ask questions she couldn't answer. The men waited outside for 10 minutes. Sera stood in her kitchen, holding a knife she'd grabbed from the drawer. Finally, she heard footsteps moving down the hall. She didn't sleep that night. Every sound made her jump, every car door, every voice in the street below. At 6 in the morning, she called the diner. "Marge, it's Sera. Can I pick up extra shifts this week?" Silence stretched on the other end. Sera, honey, I'm sorry. Business is slow. I have to let you go. The words hit her stomach hard. What? I can't afford the staff right now. I'm really sorry. The line went dead. Sera stared at her phone. No job, no money, men looking for her. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. She made hand signs, their private language since Lily had stopped speaking 2 years ago. Hungry. I'll make breakfast. Sera forced a smile. They ate cereal with milk that would expire tomorrow. Lily drew pictures while Sera made a list of every diner and restaurant within walking distance. We're going on an adventure today, Sera told her daughter. Want to see some new places? Lily nodded and gathered her crayons. They left the apartment building through the back exit. Sera checked every shadow, every parked car. The morning air was crisp. Normal people walked to work, bought coffee, lived regular lives. The first diner turned her away before she finished explaining she needed work. The second told her they weren't hiring. The third wouldn't even let her speak to a manager. By 4 o'clock, they'd visited 8 places. Lily dragged her feet, tired and confused. Sera felt desperation creeping up her throat. One more stop, she promised. They walked toward Roselli's Bar and Grill on the edge of downtown. The neighborhood got rougher with each block. Sera held Lily's hand tighter. The manager at Roselli's was kind but firm. I'd love to help, but we're fully staffed. Outside, the sun was setting. Streetlights flickered on. Sera realized they were farther from home than she'd planned. The bus routes were different here. Mama? Lily tugged her sleeve and pointed. 2 men stood near the mouth of an alley. The same men from last night. Sera's blood turned to ice. This way, baby. She pulled Lily in the opposite direction, but the men had spotted them. They walked faster, cutting across the street. Sera, one called. We just want to talk. Sera broke into a run, pulling Lily behind the building into a narrow alley. Dumpsters lined one wall. Fire escapes climbed the other. Hide, she whispered, pushing Lily behind a large dumpster. Don't come out no matter what. The men entered the alley, both bigger than Sera remembered. Both smiling in a way that made her stomach turn. Tommy's getting impatient, the first man said. His voice was calm. 48 hours, then we start taking things you care about. I don't have his money, Sera said. Her voice was steady despite the fear. Then you better find it. Or find a way to pay. The second man stepped closer. His hand reached for her arm. Sera jerked away. Don't touch me. Feisty. Tommy mentioned that. His grip caught her wrist. Sera drove her knee toward his groin. He twisted aside and backhanded her across the face. The impact sent her stumbling into the brick wall. That wasn't smart. The first man moved toward her. Headlights swept across the alley mouth. A black SUV stopped, engine rumbling. The car door slammed shut. Footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate. A man appeared at the alley entrance. Tall, broad shoulders, expensive coat. His face was sharp angles and cold eyes. He surveyed the scene with the stillness of a predator. Gentlemen? His voice cut through the air. No emotion, all authority. You're in my territory. The 2 men froze. Something shifted in their expressions. Fear. This isn't your business, DeLuca. Everything here is my business. The man, DeLuca, stepped into the alley. Walk away. Now. Tommy Barone won't like... I don't care what Tommy likes. DeLuca's voice dropped lower. Leave. The men looked at each other. The first one spat on the ground, but backed toward the alley mouth. This isn't over, he said to Sera. Yes, it is. DeLuca's words were final. The men disappeared. Their footsteps echoed down the street until silence returned. DeLuca turned toward Sera. She pressed against the brick wall, breathing hard. Blood trickled from her split lip. He took a step closer. "Just walk away, idiot," Sera snapped. "I don't need another man thinking he can control me." DeLuca stopped. His dark eyes studied her face, the bruises, the blood, the rage burning in her green eyes. Something in his expression softened for just a moment. Then he noticed Lily peering around the dumpster. Sera's breath caught. "Lily, no." But Lily had already stepped into view, 7 years old, dark hair tangled, clutching a broken crayon. She looked between Sera and DeLuca with the solemn expression she'd worn since she stopped speaking. DeLuca's entire demeanor changed. His shoulders dropped. His voice became gentle. "Hello." Lily stared at him. After a long moment, she walked past Sera and stood directly in front of this dangerous stranger. She reached up and took hold of his coat with her small fist. "Lily?" Sera stepped forward, but DeLuca knelt down to Lily's eye level. "Are you hurt?" Lily shook her head. "Good." He looked up at Sera. "You're both getting in my car." "Like hell we are." "Those men work for Luca Barone. He's Tommy's cousin and twice as violent." DeLuca stood slowly. "They'll be back with more people. I can handle myself." "I can see that." His gaze flicked to her bruised face. "But can you handle 6 men? 8? Because that's what Barone will send next time." Sera's jaw tightened. She wanted to argue, to fight, to prove she didn't need saving, but Lily was still holding DeLuca's coat. Her daughter, who hadn't trusted any man since her father left, was looking at this stranger with something that might have been hope. "I don't even know who you are," Sera said finally. "Marco DeLuca." He pulled out his phone as it buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "And those men who just threatened you? They're part of a family that specializes in making people disappear." Sera felt fear crawl up her spine. "What?" "Luca Barone. He owns half the loan sharks in the city, including your ex's debts, apparently. How do you—" "I make it my business to know." Marco's voice was flat. "Now get in the car, or I'll put you in it myself." Sera looked down at Lily. Her daughter was still gripping Marco's coat, her dark eyes wide but unafraid. "Where would you take us?" "Somewhere safe. A clinic first. You're hurt." "I can't afford—" "I can." The simple statement hung between them. Sera studied his face, looking for the angle, the catch, the price he'd demand later. She found only controlled patience. "Why would you help us?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. His eyes found Lily again, then returned to Sera. "Because nobody else will." Sera felt something crack inside her chest. The truth of it hit too close to home. Nobody had helped her when Tommy left her with his debts. Nobody had helped when the collectors started coming around. Nobody had helped when she lost job after job because bruises made customers uncomfortable. "One night," she said finally, "just to figure out what to do next." Marco nodded. "My car's outside." He led them out of the alley. The black SUV waited at the curb, engine running. The interior was leather and warmth. Lily climbed into the back seat and immediately curled up against the window. Sera sat in front, her body tense. "Where are we going?" "Dr. Romano's clinic. He handles situations like this quietly." "Situations like what?" Marco glanced at her as he pulled into traffic. "People who can't go to regular hospitals. People who need help without questions." "You mean criminals?" "I mean people who deserve medical care regardless of their circumstances." Sera's voice was bitter. "That's a nice way to put it. You think I'm a criminal, aren't you?" Marco drove in silence for several blocks. Finally, he said, "Yes." The honesty surprised her. Most men lied, especially the dangerous ones. What kind? The kind who doesn't hurt women and children. Sera studied his profile. Strong jaw, straight nose, dark hair cut short. He looked like he could snap her in half without effort, but his hands on the steering wheel were gentle. Those men knew you, she said. They knew to fear me. Why? Because I'm very good at making problems disappear. A chill ran through her. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Marco turned onto a side street lined with medical buildings, but not toward you. The clinic was small, discreet, tucked between a pharmacy and a law office. Dr. Romano was an older Italian man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined Sera's injuries while Marco waited in the hallway. Bruised ribs, split lip, minor concussion, Dr. Romano said quietly. When did this happen? 3 days ago. The lip is fresh. Are you safe now? Sera looked through the door at Marco. He stood with his back against the wall, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, urgent tones. I don't know. Dr. Romano followed her gaze. Marco's a good man, despite what people say. What do people say? That he's dangerous, that he's killed people. Dr. Romano taped gauze over a cut on her forehead. What they don't say is that he only hurts people who hurt others first. You know him well? He pays for this clinic, pays my salary, asks nothing in return except that I help people who can't help themselves. Sera felt her assumption shifting. Why? You'd have to ask him. When Dr. Romano finished, Marco drove them through the quiet streets. Sera dozed against the window, exhaustion finally catching up. She woke when the car stopped outside her apartment building. Thank you, she said, for everything. Marco nodded. Lock your doors, keep your phone on. This is over now, right? Those men won't come back? Marco's silence was answer enough. Sera helped Sleepy Lily out of the car and up to their apartment. She triple-locked the door and checked every window. Outside, the black SUV was gone. But 20 minutes later, she noticed 2 men in a blue sedan parked across the street. Different men. Watching. Her phone rang. It's Marco. Are you all right? There are men outside. I know. They're mine. Sera felt anger flare. You're having us watched? I'm keeping you alive. I didn't ask for that. Your daughter did. Marco's voice was quiet. She looked at those men tonight and knew she was in danger. She looked at me and knew she was safe. Children have better instincts than adults. Sera's chest tightened. It was true. Lily had clung to Marco without fear, something she hadn't done with any man since Tommy left. How long? Sera asked. Until the threat is gone. And when will that be? I'm working on it. The line went dead. Sera set her phone on the counter and walked to Lily's room. Her daughter was already asleep, still wearing her clothes from their long day. Sera tucked the blanket around her and kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams, baby. In the kitchen, she made coffee she couldn't afford and sat at the small table. The final notice stared up at her. $300 by Friday, or they'd cut the power. She thought about Marco's expensive car, his calm authority, the way dangerous men had backed down from him instantly. She thought about his offer of help. She thought about Lily's small hand gripping his coat. Outside, the blue sedan remained in place, watching, protecting. Sera hated needing protection, hated being vulnerable. But as she looked at Lily's drawing on the table, 2 stick figures smiling under a bright sun, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The next morning, Sera woke to sunlight streaming through the kitchen window. She'd fallen asleep at the table, her cheek pressed against Lily's drawing. Her neck ached and her ribs throbbed. Lily was awake, standing by the window in her pajamas. She pointed outside and made a questioning gesture. The blue sedan was still there. "They're making sure we're safe," Sera said. Lily nodded solemnly and went to get dressed. Sera made breakfast with the last of their groceries, toast and orange juice. While Lily ate, she called 3 more restaurants from the phone book. All gave her the same answer: no positions available. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Sera crept to the peephole. Marco stood in the hallway, alone, holding a white paper bag. She opened the door. "What are you doing here?" "Bringing breakfast." He held up the bag. "And we need to talk." "I already ate." "No, you didn't." Marco's dark eyes studied her face. "You're out of food and money. You called 8 restaurants this morning looking for work." Sera felt heat rise in her cheeks. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know." He looked past her to where Lily sat at the kitchen table. "May I come in?" Sera wanted to say no, wanted to slam the door and pretend dangerous men with gentle voices didn't exist. But the bag smelled incredible, and Lily was watching with interest. "Fine, but just for a minute." Marco entered the small apartment and looked around, noting the sparse furniture, the stack of bills on the counter, the careful way everything was organized despite having almost nothing. He set the bag on the kitchen table. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, orange juice for Lily. Lily's eyes widened. Sera's stomach growled loudly. "I can't pay you back," Sera said. "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking for?" Marco sat down across from Lily, who was staring at the food with obvious longing. "I want you to listen." "To what?" "The truth about your situation." Marco opened the bag and began setting out containers. "Tommy Barone owes money to very dangerous people. When he ran, those debts became yours by association. That's not legal." "Since when do criminals care about legal?" Sera sat down reluctantly. Lily immediately reached for a pancake, the first real smile Sera had seen from her daughter in weeks. "The men who cornered you last night work for Luca Barone," Marco continued. "He's Tommy's cousin and the family enforcer. He specializes in collecting debts through intimidation." "Meaning?" "Meaning he hurts people until they pay, or until they find other ways to settle their accounts." Something cold settled in Sera's stomach. "What other ways?" Marco's expression darkened. "You don't want to know." Lily was eating happily, apparently unbothered by the adult conversation. Sera watched her daughter's face brighten with each bite of real breakfast. "How much does Tommy owe?" Sera asked quietly. $50,000. The number hit her chest hard. 50? That's impossible. Gambling debts compound quickly. "I don't have $50,000. I don't even have $50. "I know." Sera felt panic rising. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Marco was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "You're going to let me handle it." "Handle it how?" "By making Luca Barone understand that you and Lily are under my protection." "Why would you do that?" Marco looked at Lily, who was drawing syrup patterns on her pancake. "Because some things are more important than money." "Like what?" "Like making sure children sleep safely." The simple statement carried weight Sera didn't fully understand. She studied Marco's face, looking for the angle, the catch, the price. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing." "Nobody helps for nothing." "I do." Sera felt frustration building. "You're a criminal. Criminals don't help people out of kindness." "Maybe I'm not like other criminals. Or maybe you're exactly like them and just better at hiding it." Something shifted in Marco's expression. For a moment, she saw something raw and hurt in his dark eyes. "Maybe," he said quietly. The apartment fell silent except for Lily humming tunelessly as she ate. Sera watched this dangerous stranger who'd brought her daughter pancakes and asked nothing in return. "I don't understand you," she said finally. "You don't have to understand me. You just have to trust me." "I don't trust anyone." "I know." Marco's voice was gentle. "But Lily does." They both looked at the little girl, who had finished her breakfast and was now coloring in a notebook. She seemed completely at ease with Marco's presence. "Children see things adults miss," Marco said, "or they're too naive to see danger." "Lily's not naive. She's been through too much for that." Marco stood up. "But she knows the difference between someone who will hurt her and someone who will protect her." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I was like her once." The admission hung between them. Sera wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his posture warned her off. "I need to go," Marco said. "But my men will stay outside. If anything happens, anything, you call me immediately." He handed her a business card with only a phone number. "What if I don't want your protection?" "Then I'll give it anyway." "That's not your choice to make." Marco paused at the door. "No, but it's the right thing to do." After he left, Sera sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty food containers. Lily was drawing pictures of the pancakes, adding flowers and rainbows to make them prettier. Sera's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "You have 48 hours." A man's voice, cold and flat. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows where your daughter goes to school. Someone who knows her teacher's name is Mrs. Peterson. Someone who knows she takes the bus home at 3:15 every day." Sera's blood turned to ice. "Don't you dare!" 48 hours. Find the money or find another way to pay." The line went dead. Sera stared at her phone, hands shaking. They knew about Lily's school, her routine, her teacher. She dialed Marco's number. "What's wrong?" He answered on the first ring. "They called. They know about Lily's school." "I'm on my way." "Marco, Lock the door. Don't answer it for anyone but me." Sera hung up and pulled Lily into her lap. Her daughter looked up with questioning eyes. "We might take a little trip today," Sera said, trying to keep her voice steady. Lily nodded and went back to coloring. 15 minutes later, Marco arrived with 2 other men. Both looked dangerous in expensive suits. "Pack a bag," Marco said without preamble. "Just essentials." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't find you." Sera felt her independence crumbling. "I can't just disappear. Lily has school. I need to find work." "You need to stay alive." Marco's voice was firm. "Everything else can wait." "This isn't temporary, is it?" Marco's silence answered her question. Sera looked around her small apartment, the only home Lily had known since Tommy left. The pictures on the walls, the books on shelves they'd built together, the bed where she'd held her daughter through nightmares. "How long?" she asked. "Until it's safe." "And when will that be?" Marco's dark eyes met hers. "When Luca Barone is no longer a problem." Something in his tone made Sera shiver. She didn't ask what that meant. While she packed, Marco's men checked every window, every lock, every possible entry point. They spoke in low voices about routes and safe houses and contingency plans. Lily packed her crayons and 3 stuffed animals. She seemed to understand they wouldn't be coming back soon. "Ready?" Marco asked. Sera took one last look around the apartment. At the pictures on the refrigerator, the coffee cup she'd left in the sink, the life she'd tried so hard to build. "As ready as I'll ever be." They left through the building's back exit. The black SUV waited in the alley, engine running. As they drove away, Sera watched her apartment building disappear in the side mirror. "Where are we going?" she asked. "A safe house. temporarily. And then? Marco glanced at her. Then we see how quickly Luca Barone learns to respect boundaries. The safe house was a small apartment across town, furnished but impersonal. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room with blackout curtains. Marco's men swept the place efficiently before declaring it secure. "How long have you been planning this?" Sera asked. "Since last night." "You knew this would happen." "I hoped it wouldn't, but I prepared for it anyway." Sera sat on the couch, holding Lily close. Her daughter was being remarkably calm about the sudden change, but Sera could feel the tension in her small body. "I hate this," Sera said suddenly. Marco looked up from his phone. "Which part?" "All of it. Running, hiding, depending on someone else to fix my problems. Sometimes depending on others is the smart choice." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's helpless." "You think I've never been helpless?" Marco's voice was quiet. "Have you?" Marco was silent for a long moment. "Everyone's been helpless at least once." "When?" "When it mattered most." The cryptic answer frustrated her, but something in his tone warned her not to push. That evening, Marco ordered dinner from a restaurant that delivered to safe houses without asking questions. Italian food that smelled incredible and tasted even better. Lily fell asleep early, exhausted by the day's events. Sera carried her to the smaller bedroom and tucked her in. When she returned to the living room, Marco was standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear. "No, tomorrow night. I want him to know we're serious." He paused, listening. "I don't care what his uncle thinks. This ends now." He hung up and turned to find Sera watching him. "Making more problems disappear?" she asked. "Something like that." "Are you going to kill him?" Marco studied her face. "Would that bother you?" "I don't know." The honest answer surprised them both. Sera had never imagined herself condoning violence, but the thought of Luca Barone threatening Lily made her stomach burn with rage. "He won't hurt anyone else after tomorrow," Marco said finally. "That's not really an answer." "It's the only answer you need." Sera sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. How did my life become this? Bad choices by other people. Tommy. And the people he borrowed from. Sera looked toward the bedroom where Lily slept. "She doesn't deserve this." "No, she doesn't." "Neither do you. This isn't your problem." Marco sat down across from her. "Yes, it is." "Why?" "Because I made it my problem." "But why would you do that?" Marco was quiet for so long that Sera thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because no child should have to be afraid." The simple statement carried immense weight. Sera studied his face, seeing something she hadn't noticed before. Pain, old and deep and carefully hidden. "You were afraid once," she said. It wasn't a question. Marco's jaw tightened. "We should get some sleep." "Who were you afraid of?" "It doesn't matter. Now." "It matters to me." Marco stood up abruptly. "I'll be outside. Lock the door behind me." "Marco, wait." But he was already gone, leaving Sera alone with questions and the growing realization that this dangerous man who'd saved them was carrying his own ghosts. She locked the door as instructed and checked on Lily one more time. Her daughter slept peacefully, one small hand clutching a stuffed elephant. Sera sat by the window, watching Marco pace the hallway outside their door. His phone rang constantly. His voice carried through the walls, calm, controlled, deadly. She thought about his words. Because no child should have to be afraid. Who had he been afraid of? And what had that fear cost him? Outside, she heard footsteps in the stairwell. Marco's voice went sharp and urgent. Then silence. Sera held her breath, listening. A soft knock at the door. "It's me," Marco's voice. She opened the door to find him looking grim. "What happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about tonight." But she could see it in his eyes. Tomorrow was coming, and when it arrived, someone wouldn't survive it. "Will you be here in the morning?" she asked. "I'll be here." "Promise?" Marco looked at her for a long moment. "I promise." Sera locked the door again and went to bed in her clothes, listening to Marco's quiet voice in the hallway as he made calls that would determine whether her daughter would ever be truly safe again. In the morning, she woke to find him exactly where he'd promised to be. The next day passed in tense waiting. Marco left twice for brief meetings, both times leaving armed men outside their door. When he returned the second time, his knuckles were bruised. "Is it over?" Sera asked. "Almost." That evening, as Sera was giving Lily a bath, she heard gunshots in the distance. 3 sharp cracks that made her blood freeze. Marco's phone rang immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Yes." He listened for a moment. "Good. Clean it up." He hung up and found Sera standing in the bathroom doorway, dripping wet washcloth in her hand. "Was that—" "It's over," Marco said simply. Sera felt something inside her chest uncurl for the first time in months. "Really?" "Really?" That night, after Lily was asleep, Sera found Marco on the small balcony overlooking the city. He stood with his hands on the railing, staring out at the lights. "Thank you," she said. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." Sera stepped beside him. "You saved our lives." "I did what anyone would do." "No, you did what no one else would do." Marco turned to look at her. In the dim light, his face was all shadows and sharp angles. "What happens now?" Sera asked. "Now you're safe." "I mean, what happens with us?" "There is no us. You're free to go back to your life." The words stung more than they should have. Just like that? Just like that. Sera felt anger rising. "So, you swoop in, turn my life upside down, make my daughter trust you, then disappear?" "It's better this way." "Better for who?" "For you." "Don't I get a say in what's better for me?" Marco's hands tightened on the railing. "You don't understand the kind of man I am." "I understand enough." "No, you don't." His voice was harsh now. "You see someone who helped you, but I'm someone who solves problems by making people disappear. Permanently." "I know that." "And it doesn't bother you?" Sera was quiet for a moment, considering. "It should. But all I can think about is that Lily smiled at breakfast for the first time in months. Because of you." "That doesn't change what I am." "Maybe not, but it changes what I think about what you are." Marco turned away from her. "You should pack. I'll have someone drive you home tomorrow." "What if I don't want to go home?" "You don't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice." "Not people in my world." Sera moved closer, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders. "Then maybe you need to choose a different world." "It doesn't work that way." "Why not?" Marco turned around suddenly, his dark eyes blazing. "Because I have blood on my hands that will never wash clean. Because I've done things that would give you nightmares. Because everyone I've ever cared about has ended up dead." The raw pain in his voice hit her chest hard. "Who did you lose?" Marco's jaw worked silently. Finally he whispered, "Everyone." "Tell me." "No." "Marco, go inside, lock the door. Tomorrow you go home and pretend none of this ever happened." But as he walked away, Sera saw something in his eyes that made her understand. He wasn't protecting her from his world. He was protecting himself from losing someone else. The gunshots echoed through the safe house windows at 3 in the morning. Sera jerked awake to find Marco already on his feet, phone pressed to his ear. "How many?" His voice was deadly calm. "Copy that. Secure the perimeter." He hung up and turned to Sera. "Get Lily. We're leaving. Now." "What's happening?" "Luca sent more people than I expected." Marco was already moving toward the bedroom. "My car's downstairs. 30 seconds." Sera's hands shook as she woke Lily and threw their few belongings into a bag. Lily didn't protest, sensing the urgency. She held tight to her stuffed elephant. In the hallway, 2 of Marco's men waited with guns drawn. Their faces were grim. "Building's compromised," one reported. 3 shooters on the roof across the street. Marco nodded. "Back exit. Move." They took the stairs 2 at a time. Sera carried Lily, who buried her face in her mother's shoulder. More gunshots cracked outside. Car alarms wailed. The back alley was dark and narrow. Marco's SUV idled near the dumpster, another armed man behind the wheel. "Get in," Marco ordered. Sera climbed into the back seat with Lily. Marco slid in beside them, his phone buzzing constantly. "Where are we going?" Sera asked. "Somewhere they can't find us." The SUV pulled out of the alley and into the empty streets. Sera watched the safe house disappear. Behind them, windows now flickering with muzzle flashes. "I thought you said it was over." "I was wrong." Marco's voice was tight with anger. "Luca had backup plans." "How many backup plans?" "Enough." 20 minutes later, they passed through tall iron gates. Security cameras tracked their movement as they drove up a winding road lined with mature trees. Ahead, a mansion rose from manicured grounds. Sera's breath caught. "This is your house?" "One of them." The front entrance was guarded by men who looked like they could stop bullets with their bare hands. They nodded respectfully as Marco approached. Inside, marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Original paintings lined the walls. Everything whispered expensive. "Holy shit," Sera breathed. "Language," Marco said automatically, then caught himself. "Sorry, habit." A woman in her 50s appeared from the kitchen, silver hair, kind eyes, flour-dusted apron. "Marco," she embraced him warmly. "We heard gunshots." "Mrs. Bianchi, this is Sera and Lily." Marco's voice softened. "They'll be staying with us." Mrs. Bianchi took one look at Sera's exhausted face and scared daughter and immediately went into mothering mode. "You poor dears. Come, I'll make tea. Or hot chocolate. Do you like hot chocolate, sweetheart?" Lily nodded shyly. "With marshmallows?" Another nod, this one with the hint of a smile. Mrs. Bianchi bustled them toward the kitchen while Marco disappeared with his phone. Sera found herself in a space larger than her entire apartment. Commercial-grade appliances, acres of marble countertops, windows overlooking gardens. "He didn't warn me he was bringing guests," Mrs. Bianchi said, setting milk to warm, "but Marco's full of surprises." "You work for him?" "Work for him? Child, I raised him." Mrs. Bianchi laughed. "His mother was my best friend. When she passed, I promised to look after that boy." "How old was he?" 12. Same age as my own son." Something sad crossed her face. "They grew up together in this house." "What happened to your son?" Mrs. Bianchi was quiet for a moment. "The same thing that happens to too many boys in this business. They think they're invincible until the day they're not." Sera felt a chill. "He died?" "Car bomb, 5 years ago." Mrs. Bianchi wiped her eyes with her apron. "Marco blamed himself, said he should have been in that car instead." "Why would he blame himself?" "Because Marco blames himself for everything. Always has." She handed Lily a mug of cocoa topped with miniature marshmallows. "Thinks he's responsible for keeping the whole world safe." Lily accepted the cocoa with a shy smile and the sign thank you. "Oh, you use sign language." Mrs. Bianchi's face lit up. "My sister was deaf. I know a little." She signed your welcome back to Lily, whose smile grew wider. Marco returned an hour later to find Lily asleep on the kitchen couch and Sera nursing her third cup of tea. "Everything secure?" Mrs. Bianchi asked. "For now, I've tripled the perimeter guards." "Good. These two need rest." She gathered Lily gently into her arms. "I've prepared the blue suite. Second floor, east wing." "Thank you." After Mrs. Bianchi disappeared with Lily, Sera found herself alone with Marco for the first time since the shooting. "This can't continue," she said. "What?" "Running, hiding, living in fear." Marco sat down across from her. "It's temporary." "You said that before." "This time I mean it." "How can you be sure?" "Because tomorrow I'm going to end this permanently." Something in his tone made Sera's stomach tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means Luca Barone won't be a problem anymore." "You're going to kill him." "I'm going to solve the problem." "That's the same thing." Marco was quiet for a long moment. "Yes." "What if something goes wrong? What if you don't come back?" "Then Enzo will take care of you." "I don't want Enzo to take care of me. I want—" Sera stopped. "What do you want?" She looked at him sitting across from her in his expensive kitchen, blood still on his knuckles from whatever had happened earlier, exhaustion in his dark eyes. "I want Lily to be safe. I want to stop running." She paused. "I want you to come back." Something shifted in Marco's expression. For just a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped. "That's not a good idea." "Why?" "Because I'm not the kind of man you come back to." "What kind of man are you?" "The kind who destroys everything he touches." "You haven't destroyed us." "Yet." Sera felt frustration building. "You keep saying that, but I'm still here. Lily's still here. We're still breathing. For now." "Stop it." Her voice was sharp. "Stop acting like you're some kind of monster." "I am a monster." "No, you're not. Monsters don't make sure scared little girls have hot chocolate with marshmallows." Marco flinched. "You don't understand. Then help me understand." Some things are better left alone, and some things are worth fighting for. Their eyes met across the kitchen table. The silence stretched between them, heavy with words as neither was ready to say. Finally, Marco stood. "I'll show you to your room." The blue suite was larger than Sera's entire apartment. King-sized bed, sitting area, marble bathroom, windows overlooking the garden. Lily was already asleep in the smaller adjoining room, tucked under a quilt that probably cost more than Sera's monthly rent. "Mrs. Bianchi stocked the bathroom with everything you might need," Marco said. "If you want anything else—" "Marco." He stopped at the door. "Be careful tomorrow." "I'm always careful." "Promise me." He turned back to look at her. "Why does it matter?" "Because it matters to Lily." "And to you?" Sera held his gaze. "Yes, to me." Marco nodded once and left, closing the door softly behind him. Sera stood in the middle of the beautiful room and felt completely lost. 3 days ago, she'd been a broke single mother getting fired from a dead-end job. Now she was living in a mansion, protected by a man who killed people for a living, a man she was falling for. The thought hit her chest hard. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to process the impossibility of it all. She didn't fall for dangerous men. She'd learned that lesson with Tommy. But Marco was different. Marco didn't make promises he couldn't keep. Marco didn't leave bruises. Marco made sure children had hot chocolate. In the morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. the shooting, the mansion, Marco planning to kill someone today. Lily was already awake, playing quietly with her elephant on the thick carpet. She looked up when Sera stirred and signed hungry. "Let's find the kitchen." They wandered through hallways lined with art that belonged in museums. Everything was elegant, expensive, and somehow cold despite the obvious care in its arrangement. The kitchen was warm and welcoming, filled with the scents of fresh bread and brewing coffee. Mrs. Bianchi was at the stove, humming while she cooked. "Good morning, sleepyheads. I was wondering when you'd surface." "Where's Marco?" Sera asked. "Left early. Had business to attend to." Mrs. Bianchi's smile was forced. "He'll be back tonight." "What kind of business?" "The kind that keeps people like you safe." Sera felt her stomach knot. Somewhere in the city, Marco was making good on his promise to end the threat permanently. "Sit, eat," Mrs. Bianchi ordered. "You're both too thin." Breakfast was fresh fruit, homemade pastries, and the best coffee Sera had ever tasted. Lily ate with enthusiasm while Mrs. Bianchi chattered about the garden, the weather, anything except where Marco had gone. "Can I ask you something?" Sera said finally. "Of course, dear." "What happened to Marco's family? His wife and son you mentioned?" Mrs. Bianchi's face grew sad. "Car bomb. Meant for Marco, but he was running late that morning. Isabella had taken Antonio to school." She shook her head. 5 years ago next month." Sera felt her chest tighten. "How old was his son?" 7. Same age as your Lily." Sera looked at her daughter, trying to imagine the pain of losing her. The guilt of knowing it should have been him instead. "He's never forgiven himself," Mrs. Bianchi continued. "Blames himself for everything that's gone wrong since. Before that, Marco was different. He laughed more, smiled. After—" she shrugged sadly. "After, he became what you see now." "What's that?" "A man who thinks love is too dangerous to risk." The words hit Sera hard. She thought about Marco's behavior, the careful distance, the insistence that she didn't understand what kind of man he was. He wasn't protecting her from his world. He was protecting himself from caring about someone else he might lose. "Where are they buried?" Sera asked. "St. Mary's Cemetery. He visits every week, but never on the anniversary. Says he doesn't deserve to grieve them on that day." Sera felt tears prick her eyes. "That's terrible. That's Marco, always punishing himself for things beyond his control." They spent the morning exploring the mansion. Lily was fascinated by everything: the library with its rolling ladders, the conservatory filled with exotic plants, the game room with its billiard table and vintage arcade games. In Marco's study, Sera found photographs on his desk. A beautiful woman with dark hair and laughing eyes. A little boy with Marco's serious expression but his mother's smile. "That's them," Mrs. Bianchi said softly from the doorway. "They look happy." They were. Marco adored that boy. Taught him to read, to ride a bike, to throw a baseball. Her voice caught. Antonio wanted to be just like his papa. Sera picked up the photo. The little boy was missing his front teeth and a gap-toothed grin. He had his arms around Marco's neck, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. "He would have liked Lily," Mrs. Bianchi said. "You think so?" "I know so. Marco's been different since you arrived. More present, like he's remembering how to be around children again. Lily likes him too. She doesn't usually trust men. Children see truth better than adults. Your Lily knows Marco would never hurt her. But he might hurt himself protecting her." Mrs. Bianchi studied Sera's face. "You care about him." "I shouldn't." "Why not?" "Because this is all temporary. Once the threat is gone, he'll send us away." "Will he?" "He said he would. Marco says lots of things when he's scared." He doesn't seem scared of anything. He's terrified of everything, dear, especially caring about people again. That afternoon, Lily discovered the garden. Acre of perfectly maintained grounds with fountains, rose gardens, and a small pond with ornamental fish. She ran ahead while Sera walked slowly behind, trying to process everything she'd learned about Marco, a man who'd lost his family, a man who blamed himself for their deaths, a man who was now risking his life to protect her and Lily. Her phone rang, Marco's name on the screen. "Are you all right?" she asked immediately. "I'm fine. How are you and Lily?" "We're good. Mrs. Bianchi is spoiling us." "Good." His voice was strained. "I wanted to let you know. It's going to be a long day. Don't wait up." "Marco, I have to go." The line went dead. Sera stared at her phone, worry eating at her stomach. That evening, they ate dinner without Marco. Mrs. Bianchi made Lily's favorite foods and told stories about Marco as a boy, getting into trouble, bringing home stray animals, always trying to fix things that were broken. "He had such a good heart," she said sadly. "Still does, underneath all the walls he's built." Lily fell asleep early, exhausted from exploring. Sera tucked her in and sat by the window, watching the garden in the moonlight. At 11 o'clock, she heard car engines in the driveway. Male voices, footsteps on marble floors. Marco was back. She found him in the kitchen, washing blood from his hands. His shirt was torn, his knuckles split open. "Are you hurt?" She moved toward him automatically. "It's not my blood." The simple statement should have frightened her. Instead, she felt relief that he was alive. "Is it over?" "It's over." Sera studied his face, looking for signs of injury. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "What happened?" Marco dried his hands on a towel. "Luca Barone won't be threatening anyone anymore." "And his men?" "They've been convinced to find other employment." Sera knew she should ask more questions, should want details about what had happened, how many people had died, whether Marco had been the one to kill them. Instead, she stepped closer and touched his bruised knuckles. "You need ice for these." Marco looked down at her small hands holding his. "Sera?" "Sit down. I'll get the first aid kit." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding. Sit." To her surprise, he obeyed. She found medical supplies in the kitchen and knelt beside his chair to clean the cuts on his hands. "Mrs. Bianchi told me about your family," she said quietly. Marco's entire body went rigid. She had no right. "She's worried about you." "There's nothing to worry about." "Isn't there?" Sera looked up at him. "When's the last time you let yourself grieve for them?" "I don't grieve. I move forward." "That's not the same thing." "It's what keeps me alive." Sera finished bandaging his knuckles and sat back on her heels. "What keeps you alive is having something to live for." "I had something to live for. They died." "I know. I'm sorry." Marco was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I was supposed to drive them to school that morning, got called away on business. Isabella took the car instead. It wasn't your fault." "Wasn't it? The bomb was meant for me." "Which means you would have died too. Then your son would have lost both his parents." "He lost them anyway." Sera reached up and touched his face, making him look at her. "You can't live your life paying for something that was never your fault." "Can I?" "Not if you want to actually live." Marco caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. His eyes were dark with pain. She finally understood. "I don't know how," he whispered. "You learn, one day at a time." "What if I can't?" "Then you fake it until you remember how." They sat in the quiet kitchen, her hand warm against his face, both of them afraid to move and break the moment. Finally, Marco pulled away. You should get some sleep. What about you? I don't sleep much. Because of nightmares? Because sleep requires letting your guard down. You're safe here. I'm never safe. Neither are you, as long as you're with me. I thought you said the threat was over? This threat is over. There's always another one. Sera felt frustration building again. So what? We hide forever? Lily grows up in a fortress. You don't hide. You go home. Tomorrow. What if I don't want to go home? You don't have a choice. Stop telling me I don't have choices. Her voice rose. I'm not your prisoner. No, you're my responsibility. I don't want to be your responsibility. I want to be... She stopped. What? Sera looked at him sitting in his expensive kitchen, blood still under his fingernails, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. I want to be the reason you remember how to live again. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Marco's breath caught. That's not possible. Why not? Because everyone I've ever cared about ends up dead. Not everyone. Mrs. Bianchi's still here. Your men are still here. That's different. How? Because I don't... He stopped, jaw working silently. You don't what? Marco stood up abruptly. You're leaving tomorrow. I'll have Enzo drive you. Marco, this conversation is over. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Sera alone with her racing heart and the growing certainty that she was falling in love with a man who was determined to push her away. Upstairs, she checked on Lily and found her fast asleep, clutching her elephant. Safe, peaceful. Through the window, she could see Marco on the terrace below, standing in the darkness with a glass of whiskey. His phone rang constantly, but he ignored it. Sera watched him for a long time, memorizing the line of his shoulders, the way he held his head when he thought no one was looking. Tomorrow, he would send them away. Tonight, she was going to tell him exactly why that was the worst idea he'd ever had. Sera woke to silence. The mansion felt different this morning. Empty. She checked Lily's bed, still warm, but vacant. Panic fluttered in her chest until she heard laughter from downstairs. In the kitchen, she found Lily sitting on Marco's lap at the breakfast table. He was helping her draw pictures while Mrs. Bianchi cooked pancakes. The scene was so domestic, it made Sera's heart ache. Mama! Lily signed excitedly and held up her drawing. A house with 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, all holding hands. It's beautiful, baby. Sera's voice was thick. Marco looked up, his dark eyes unreadable. Good morning? Morning. She sat down across from them. Sleep well? Some. Mrs. Bianchi set a plate in front of Sera, pancakes shaped like butterflies, just like she used to make for Lily on special occasions. How did you know? Sera asked. Little Miss here showed me. Mrs. Bianchi winked at Lily. We've been having quite the conversation. Lily beamed and signed something to Marco. He nodded seriously and signed back. Sera felt her breath catch. You know sign language? I learned. Marco's voice was quiet. Last night. You learned sign language in one night? Basic phrases, online tutorials. He looked embarrassed. I wanted to talk to her properly. Sera felt something crack open in her chest. This dangerous man had spent the night learning to communicate with her daughter. What did she tell you? Sera asked. Marco looked down at Lily, who was coloring carefully. She asked if I was going to disappear. What did you tell her? That sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. After breakfast, Marco disappeared into his study. Sera could hear him on the phone, arranging their departure, making calls about cars and safe routes and new identities if needed. She found Lily in the conservatory, sitting quietly among the orchids. Her daughter looked up with serious eyes. "You like it here," Sera said. Lily nodded. "You like Marco." Another nod, more emphatic this time. "Me too, baby. Me too." Lily signed something Sera didn't recognize. Then she ran to find Mrs. Bianchi for translation. "She wants to know why sad people think they have to be alone," Mrs. Bianchi interpreted. "The wisdom of children." Sera knelt down to Lily's level. "Sometimes people get hurt so badly they forget how to trust happiness," she said. "They think if they care about someone, that person might get hurt too." Lily considered this gravely. Then she marched toward Marco's study with determination. "Lily, wait!" But her daughter was already knocking on the heavy wooden door. "Come in," Marco's voice called. Sera followed Lily into the study. Marco was behind his desk, papers spread everywhere, phone pressed to his ear. "I'll call you back," he said, and hung up. Lily walked straight to the desk and climbed onto his chair. Marco caught her automatically, settling her on his lap. She pointed to the photograph of his son and wife, then pointed to herself and Sera. Then she made the sign for family. Marco's face went very still. "Lily." She put her small hands on either side of his face and made him look at her. Then she signed something slowly, deliberately. "What did she say?" Sera asked. Marco's voice was rough. "She said sad people need families most of all." Lily kissed his forehead, the same way she kissed Sera when nightmares made her cry. Then she climbed down and walked out of the study, her mission accomplished. Marco stared after her, something broken and vulnerable in his expression. "She's right," Sera said quietly. "She's 7 years old." 7-year-olds see things clearly, no complications, no excuses. Sera moved closer to the desk. "She sees a man who's been alone too long." "I'm alone for good reasons." "Are you? Or are you alone because you're scared?" Marco's jaw tightened. "I'm not scared." "You're terrified of caring about us, of losing us, of having to grieve again." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Sera's voice was firm. "I understand you think love is a luxury you can't afford, but here's what you don't understand. Love isn't something you choose or don't choose. It just happens. Not to me. Especially to you." She leaned across the desk. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to fall for a man who kills people for a living? A man who could disappear tomorrow and leave? Me explaining to my daughter why another person she trusted abandoned her?" Marco went very still. I'm not what? In love with you?" Sera laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I absolutely am. Against all logic, against all my survival instincts, against everything I swore I'd never do again." "Sera." "I'm not finished." Her voice was steady now. "You want to know what scares me? It's not your world. It's not the danger. It's watching you throw away the best thing that's happened to any of us because you think you don't deserve it." Marco stood up abruptly. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" "Then tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you don't care about us." "It doesn't matter if I care. It's the only thing that matters. People I care about die." The words exploded out of him, raw with pain. He turned away, hands braced on the windowsill. "Isabella died because she was with me. Antonio died because he was my son. Everyone pays the price for my choices." "And what about the price of not choosing?" Sera moved behind him. "What about the price of being so afraid of loss that you never really live?" "At least no one else gets hurt." "Everyone gets hurt. Me, Lily, you, Mrs. Bianchi watching you disappear a little more every day." Sera's voice was soft now. "Your wife and son, what would they want for you?" Marco's shoulders tensed. "Don't. They'd want you to be happy. They'd want you to have a family again." I had a family. They're gone. So you're going to spend the rest of your life in a mausoleum, visiting graves and refusing to let anyone else matter? Yes. The simple answer hung in the air between them. Sera felt tears prick her eyes. Then you're not the man I thought you were. She turned to leave, but Marco's voice stopped her. What kind of man did you think I was? Sera looked back at him. The kind who fights for what he wants, the kind who doesn't give up when things get difficult. She paused. The kind who's brave enough to love again. I'm not brave. You're the bravest man I've ever met. You just don't know it. She left him standing in his study, surrounded by pictures of the dead and contracts for the living. An hour later, Enzo arrived to take them home. Ready? He asked, not unkindly. Sera looked around the kitchen where Lily was saying goodbye to Mrs. Bianchi. Her daughter's eyes were bright with unshed tears. 5 more minutes? Enzo nodded and stepped outside. Will you tell Marco goodbye for us? Sera asked Mrs. Bianchi. Tell him yourself. He's on the terrace. Sera found him standing by the stone railing, staring out over the gardens. He didn't turn when she approached. We're leaving now. I know. Is there anything you want to say? Stay safe. That's it? Marco finally looked at her. His face was carefully blank, but she could see the pain he was trying to hide. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you'll miss us. I want you to say this matters to you. Her voice caught. I want you to say you love me. Something flickered in his eyes. Sera, because I love you, completely and stupidly, hopelessly. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love the way you learned sign language in one night. I love that you make sure scared little girls have hot chocolate. I love that you carry pictures of your family because you can't bear to forget them. Stop. I love you, Marco, and I think you love me too. It doesn't matter. It's all that matters. Marco looked away. Goodbye, Sera. The dismissal was gentle but final. Sera felt her heart break cleanly in half. Goodbye. She turned and walked away, not trusting herself to say anything else. Lily was waiting in Enzo's car, clutching her elephant. When Sera climbed in beside her, Lily signed a question. Is Marco coming? No, baby. Marco's staying here. Lily's face crumpled. She looked back at the mansion as they drove away, watching until it disappeared behind the trees. They drove in silence for 20 minutes before Enzo's phone rang. He answered on Bluetooth. Yeah, boss? Marco's voice filled the car. Change of destination. Where to? The safe house on Pine Street. Something's wrong. Sera felt ice in her veins. What's wrong? Luca had a brother. He just arrived from Sicily with 12 men. Marco's voice was tight. You're not safe at your apartment. I thought you said it was over. I was wrong. Enzo was already turning the car around. ETA 15 minutes, boss. Make it 10. They raced through the city streets while Marco explained the situation. Luca's brother Salvatore was older, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. He'd spent 3 days planning his revenge. How long do we have? Sera asked. They hit your apartment building 20 minutes ago. When they don't find you there, they'll start checking hospitals, schools, anywhere you might go. What about your house? They don't know about my house. Yet. The safe house was a nondescript apartment building in a middle-class neighborhood. Enzo parked in the underground garage and hustled them into an elevator. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. Marco's already inside. Sera's heart hammered as they walked down the hallway. The door opened before they could knock. Marco stood there in tactical gear, weapons visible under his jacket. His face was grim. Inside, now. The apartment was small, functional, completely different from the mansion. Marco had maps spread on the kitchen table, phones charging on every available surface. "How bad is it?" Sera asked. "Bad. Salvatore brought his best people. They know this city. They know my organization." Marco's voice was clinical. "They're not going to stop until they find you." "What do we do?" "You hide. I eliminate the threat." "Like you eliminated Luca?" "Salvatore's not his brother. He's careful, patient. This is going to take time." Lily had gone very quiet, sensing the danger. She climbed onto the couch and curled up with her elephant. "How much time?" Sera asked. "Days, maybe weeks. We can't live like this. You can't live at all if they find you." Marco's phone rang. He answered immediately. "Report." He listened, his expression growing darker. "How many casualties?" Another pause. "Understood. Pull back to secondary positions." He hung up and looked at Sera. "They hit one of my warehouses, killed 3 of my men." "I'm sorry." "This is what happens when I let personal feelings cloud my judgment." "This isn't your fault." "Isn't it? I should have killed Salvatore the moment I knew he was coming." "Then why didn't you?" "Because I was distracted." His eyes found hers. "Because instead of focusing on business, I was thinking about you." The admission hung between them. Sera felt her breath catch. "Marco." "I can't afford distractions, not in this business." "I'm not a distraction. I'm a reason to be careful." "Same thing." "No, it's not." Sera moved closer. "A distraction makes you reckless. A reason makes you smart." "Does it?" "Because 3 good men are dead because I wasn't focused enough to see this coming." 3 good men are dead because a psychopath wanted revenge, not because you care about someone. Marco's phone rang again. This time, the conversation was in rapid Italian. When he hung up, his face was stone. "They found the safe house on Elm Street, burned it down." "Was anyone—" "It was empty, but they're getting closer." The next few hours passed in tense waiting. Marco coordinated his response from the kitchen table while Sera tried to keep Lily calm. Every phone call brought worse news. More warehouses hit, more men killed, more safe houses compromised. "He's systematically destroying my organization," Marco said after the latest update. "How is that possible?" "Because he has inside information." "Meaning what?" "Meaning someone in my organization is feeding him intelligence." Sera felt cold creep up her spine. "Someone you trust." "Someone I trusted." "Any idea who?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. "One." That evening, while Lily slept on the couch, Sera sat across from Marco at the kitchen table. Maps and phones and weapons lay between them. "Tell me about the traitor," she said. "His name is Vincent Russo. I've known him for 15 years. Marco's voice was flat. "He was at my wedding, held my son when he was born." "Why would he betray you?" "Money? Fear? Maybe both." Marco rubbed his eyes. "Salvatore probably offered him a choice. Betray me or watch his family die. So he chose his family over yours. Wouldn't you?" Sera considered this. "If it was Lily, yes. I'd do anything to protect her." "Even betray someone you cared about?" "Even that." Marco nodded grimly. "Vincent has 2 daughters. Salvatore knows that." "What are you going to do?" "What I have to do." Sera knew better than to ask for details. Some things were better left unknown. Marco's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it and stood immediately. "Vincent wants to meet. Says he has information about Salvatore's next move. It's obviously a trap." "Obviously. So why are you going?" "Because it's the only way to end this." Sera felt panic rise in her throat. What if Salvatore's there? Then this ends tonight. What if you don't come back? Marco paused at the door. Then Enzo will take care of you and Lily, get you new identities, relocate you somewhere safe. I don't want new identities. I want you to come back. That might not be possible. Sera stood and walked toward him. Then make it possible. Sera? No. Her voice was firm. You don't get to do this. You don't get to make me fall in love with you and then throw your life away. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm protecting yours. What's the point of protecting my life if you're not going to be in it? Marco reached up and touched her face. The point is that you get to live. You and Lily get to be safe and happy. I can't be happy without you. You'll learn. Will I? Because I've been trying to learn how to live without people I love my entire life. My parents died when I was 16. Tommy left when things got hard. Everyone I've ever counted on has disappeared. Her voice broke. I can't do it again. You're stronger than you think. I'm not strong enough to lose you, too. Marco pulled her closer, holding her against his chest. She could feel his heart beating, fast and hard. I have to go, he whispered. I know. If something happens, it won't. If it does, I need you to know. He pulled back to look at her. I need you to know that these past few days have been the best I've had in 5 years. Marco. And if I could choose differently, if I could be a different kind of man, I would choose you. Every time. Before she could respond, he kissed her. His lips were warm and desperate and tasted like goodbye. Sera kissed him back with everything she had, trying to pour all her love and fear and hope into this one moment. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Come back to me, she whispered. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. Marco smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Yes, ma'am. Then he was gone, leaving Sera alone with sleeping Lily and the terrible certainty that she might never see him again. She sat by the window, watching the street below. Every car that passed made her heart race. Every shadow could be an enemy. At midnight, gunshots echoed from somewhere across the city. Sera's hands shook as she gripped the windowsill. At 1 o'clock, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Her voice was barely a whisper. It's done. Marco's voice, rough with exhaustion. You're alive. I'm alive. Are you hurt? Nothing serious. Relief flooded through her. Where are you? Coming home. The word hit her chest hard. Home, not going back, not returning. Coming home. Hurry, she said. I'm hurrying. 20 minutes later, she heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened, and Marco stepped inside, blood on his shirt, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Sera ran to him without thinking. He caught her, lifting her off the ground as she wrapped her arms around his neck. You came back, she breathed. I promised I would. Is it really over? It's really over. Marco set her down but didn't let go. Salvatore won't be a problem anymore. Neither will anyone else. What about Vincent? Vincent made his choice. Now he has to live with the consequences. Sera didn't ask what that meant. She was too grateful to have Marco alive and safe in her arms. What happens now? She asked. Now? Marco touched her face, wiping away tears she didn't realize she was crying. Now we figure out what comes next. Together? If you'll have me. Are you asking? Marco was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. I'm asking if you want to build something real, not just hiding from danger, not just surviving day to day. Something permanent. Like what? Like a family. The word hung between them, heavy with possibility. Sera looked at Lily sleeping on the couch, then back at Marco. She already thinks of you as family. What about you? I think of you as home. Marco kissed her again, softer this time, with the promise of tomorrow instead of the desperation of goodbye. When they broke apart, Lily was awake, watching them with sleepy eyes. She climbed off the couch and walked over, taking both their hands. She looked up at Marco and signed something Sera didn't recognize. "What did she say?" Sera asked. Marco's voice was thick with emotion. She said, "Now we're really a family." Lily nodded solemnly and led them both to the couch, curling up between them with her elephant. As Sera watched her daughter fall back asleep against Marco's chest, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. 6 months later, they stood in the garden of the mansion Sera now called home. Lily ran between the rose bushes, chasing butterflies while Mrs. Bianchi watched from the terrace. "She's getting so big," Marco said, wrapping his arms around Sera from behind. "She's happy, really happy." "What about you?" Sera leaned back against his chest. "I'm exactly where I belong." The past 6 months had been an adjustment. Learning to live in Marco's world, understanding the balance between danger and safety, finding her place in a life she'd never imagined. But it worked. Marco had scaled back his more dangerous operations, focusing on legitimate businesses. Sera had started working part-time at Mrs. Bianchi's favorite charity, helping other women in crisis. Lily spoke now, not constantly, but when she had something important to say. She called Marco Papa and drew pictures of their family on every available surface. "I have something to ask you," Marco said suddenly. "What?" He turned her around to face him and dropped to one knee. Sera's breath caught as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Sera Dalton, you saved my life in that alley. Not from those men, but from myself." His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "You taught me that love isn't something to fear. It's something to fight for." Lily had stopped chasing butterflies and was watching with huge eyes. "Will you marry me?" Marco asked. "Will you let me love you and Lily for the rest of my life?" Sera looked down at this dangerous, gentle man who'd learned sign language for her daughter and made sure she always had hot chocolate with marshmallows. This man who'd faced his worst fears to build a future with them. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely, yes." Marco slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with a stone that caught the afternoon light. Then he stood and kissed her, while Lily cheered and Mrs. Bianchi applauded from the terrace. That evening, they had dinner on the patio, the three of them plus Mrs. Bianchi, who insisted on cooking to celebrate. Lily sat in her special chair between Sera and Marco, chattering about wedding plans and flower colors. After dinner, Marco disappeared briefly and returned with a wrapped package for Lily. "What's this for?" Sera asked. "For being the bravest little girl I know." Lily tore off the wrapping to reveal a new set of art supplies, paints, brushes, canvases, everything she'd need to create masterpieces. She threw her arms around Marco's neck. "Thank you, Papa." "You're welcome, Principessa." Later, after Lily was asleep, Sera and Marco sat in their bedroom, the room they'd been sharing for 3 months now, though Marco had been a perfect gentleman about giving her space to adjust. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "About the wedding?" "No." "About being a father again?" Marco was quiet for a moment, terrified. "Why?" "Because I failed at it once." "You didn't fail. You lost them. That's different." "Is it?" Sera took his hand. "Antonio would be proud of the man you've become. Proud that you found love again. Proud that you're taking care of Lily." "How can you be sure?" "Because children want their parents to be happy, even when they can't be there to see it." Marco squeezed her hand. I love you. I love you too. Are you sure about this? About marrying into my world? I'm not marrying your world. I'm marrying you. Same thing. No, it's not. Sera turned to face him fully. Your world is what you do. You are who you choose to be, and you choose to be good. Even when I have to do bad things? Even then, because the bad things you do protect the good things you love. Marco pulled her closer. I want to be worthy of you and Lily. You already are. I want to be the father she deserves. You will be. I want to give you the life you should have. You already have. Marco kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. I want to marry you tomorrow, Sera laughed. Tomorrow's a little fast. Next week? Next month. Mrs. Bianchi will never forgive us if she doesn't have time to plan properly. Next month, then. They fell asleep tangled together, planning a future neither had believed possible 6 months ago. The wedding was small, intimate, perfect. Just family and a few close friends in the mansion's garden. Lily was the flower girl, taking her job very seriously as she scattered rose petals down the makeshift aisle. Mrs. Bianchi cried through the entire ceremony. Enzo gave a speech about how he'd never seen Marco truly happy until now. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Marco kissed Sera with such tenderness that several of his men had to wipe their eyes. At the reception, Lily danced with Marco while Sera watched from their table. Her daughter was laughing, spinning in her flower girl dress, completely at ease with the man who'd become her father. They're beautiful together, Mrs. Bianchi said, sitting beside her. They are. You did good, dear. You gave him his heart back. He did the same for me. As the evening wound down, the three of them stood on the terrace watching the sunset. Lily leaned against the railing between them, pointing out shapes in the clouds. That one looks like an elephant, she said. I see a butterfly, Sera offered. What do you see, Papa? Lily asked. Marco looked out over the gardens, then down at his new family. I see home. Lily nodded seriously. Me too. She took both their hands and swung between them, humming the same tuneless song she'd hummed in the diner kitchen all those months ago. Sera looked at her husband, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. For the dangerous man who'd saved them, for the gentle father who'd claimed them, for the home they'd built together from love and hope and second chances. What are you thinking about? Marco asked. Everything, nothing, how we got here. Do you regret any of it? Sera considered the question. The fear, the running, the uncertainty, the broken heart she'd carried for so long, the walls she'd built around herself and Lily. No, she said finally, not a single moment. Not even when I was being stubborn about letting you in? Especially not that. You needed time to trust happiness again. What about you? Did you need time? I needed you. Marco smiled and pulled her closer. You have me, both of you, forever. Lily looked up at them with wise 7-year-old eyes. Promise? Promise, Marco said solemnly. Double promise? Triple promise. Lily giggled and went back to humming. As the stars came out over their garden, Sera felt the last of her fears finally fade away. They were safe. They were loved. They were home. And tomorrow they would wake up together and build another day of the life they'd chosen. It was enough. It was everything. They were finally home.